Hello again, everyone, and welcome back to the Frontline with Joe and Joe. Joe Pasillo, as always, joined by Joe Resinello. And once more, dear brothers and sisters, let us go in to the breach on the Crusade channel, always on air and always online at crusadechannel.com, the last live radio station standing. Remember, the chat room is open at crusadechannel.com/chat. We encourage you all to get in there. We encourage you all to become premium members of the Crusade channel. There's a lot of great content there. You got Mike Church, the King Dude, Rick Barrett, Kennedy Hall, Joe and Joe, Brother Andre Marie. It's a great lineup. It's worth every penny. And as Joe and I always say, it's not a radio station. It's a cause. All right. That's what it is. All right. The Crusade channel is doing it right out there in the breach, speaking the truth on all levels, politics, culture, economics, whatever the case might be. So we need to support those who are out there spreading the truth. Along those same lines, please support Joe and I at the Frontline with Joe and Joe wherever you see us on social media. We would encourage you, though, specifically Frontline TV on YouTube. If you could go there, if you could like us there, if you could like Frontline TV, more importantly, share the videos you see. Again, not just Joe and I. Dr. Robert Sungenis is on there, and a great lineup on Frontline TV and Joe and Joe. All right. And wherever you find us, like, subscribe, share, do all that fun stuff. And one final reminder that Joe and I are on the Veritas Catholic Radio Network. That is AM radio in Connecticut, Westchester, Northern Long Island. So you could go to Veritas Catholic Radio Network and download their mobile app. You could have access to all their stations' content. Don't cost nothing. And Joe and I have a Sunday afternoon at 5:00 interview show. We got a lot of great interviews on there. Interviews we think you'd be interested in listening to. We would encourage you to download the app so that you can listen to all our past shows. Bill Donahue, Raymond Arroyo, E. Michael Jones, and a whole host of other people. Now, having said all that, all right, we got the promos out of the way. Let's get to a little meat and potatoes, okay? Because, Joe, the alternate reality is coming to us. Now, we've been seeing this for years, okay? The devil has been at work. He's been at work all through human history, but particularly in the last couple hundred years. And there's so many things, particularly now with technology and everything else, social media. All of it, Joe, is at the end of the day meant to distract us from the good, the true, and the beautiful, which is God, okay? And it just, when you think it can't get any worse, when you think, all right, maybe pornography is where it's going to stop, where can it go beyond that? Okay. We're going to talk about this, Joe. It pains me to even call it this. Okay. The metaverse, whatever the hell the metaverse is. Okay. Whatever this concoction in Mark Zuckerberg's mind is, it's dangerous. But we need to break it down in layman's terms as we do at the Frontline with Joe and Joe. Because remember, this is kitchen table discussion. We put it in layman's terms, all right? Because our reaction to this nonsense, Joe, is what everybody else has reacted to it, and they say it in the way we do. So we're going to talk about that. But ultimately, what it comes down to, and we're going to begin the conversation talking about an article that Anthony Esolen wrote in Crisis Magazine. Baby, it's all or nothing. He didn't use the word baby. I did, all right? But it's all or nothing. And we want to emphasize, and then I'm going to hand it over to my brother, Joe Resinello. We need to emphasize that no matter how much we struggle, and we all struggle, we have to slog our way through this life, okay? Catechism 409 says flat out that all of man's history is a history of the struggle between good and evil, the struggles that we go through. We don't walk on water, we don't pretend to, but here's the difference as faithful Roman Catholics, okay, is that we know the difference between the truth and a lie. We know the difference between striving with our heart and our soul and our will to know God, to love God, and to serve God. And that's what God wants from us. We learn that from the church, from Holy Mother Church. Anthony Esolen makes a good point, though, Joe. It's all or nothing, baby. It's all or nothing, okay? You're either, like Dylan said, you're either going to serve God or you're going to serve the devil, but make no mistake, you're going to serve somebody. And with that, I'm handing it over to you, brother.
Well, we're going to start off, as Joe said, with the metaverse. I love a comment in the chat room. Kat A, she says, whatever it is, I'm out. I'm with you.
Yeah. I'm out. Joe, how do we say it? How do we say it? Like if somebody asks you to do something, if you're hanging out in the corner, I'm sorry, I got to go. I got that thing. I got that thing. I can't do it.
But Horvat, who's a friend of the show, he's been on a number of times, wrote a great article on this in LifeSite News. We invite you to check it out. This is what he had to say about the metaverse. He said, the next step in the cyber revolution is the so-called metaverse. And I'm going to give you a little background as far as what it is, and then we'll talk about it.
Well, Joe, we do have to let people know go ahead,
Oh,
exactly
absolutely.
what it is.
So it's a powerful computing platform that goes beyond anything seen to date. Excuse me. It's marketed as the next generation of the internet, facilitating intense experiences and opening new markets. Some fear this metaverse will make present social media addictions worse. However, no one considers the moral implications of the project. It will allow individuals to immerse themselves in a world of their own creation. They'll be able, they will be capable of being whatever they want to be, on the moon, on top of buildings, in a field of unicorns. This platform can inhibit, it can be inhibited by extraterrestrials, angels, demons, anything following any fantasy that you could possibly have. Ultimately, it will harm souls, and this is what we're going to talk about. The metaverse is a metaphysical attack on the church's worldview. It obliterates the nature of God's created universe. It will make possible immoral acts that will gravely offend God. The metaverse must be understood in the context of a process of modernity's continuous effort to put humanity, not God, at the center of all things. Indeed, modernity has an obsession with imagining new worlds without God, and we have not seen this impulse so strong since the Enlightenment. And that's what Horvath had to say. I couldn't agree with him more.
Well, that's the thing. And he mentioned the important part is like, the Enlightenment, which is the most inappropriately named movement in all of human history. The Enlightenment was a darkening, Joe, of the human intellect. All the Enlightenment sought to do was take God out of every equation, even by so-called Christians. Okay, that's what the Enlightenment did. It was, of course, the precursor to the Enlightenment. Of course, was the Protestant Revolution, which took away the objective reality that the church taught and subjectivized Christianity. Well, it's just about you. It's just about personal conscience. Okay, if whether you talk about Luther or Calvin or whatever the case might be. And then and then obviously maybe they didn't see it, but you could see the consequences. Well, what you have is this over time, over the last 500 years, Protestantism turns into atheism. Atheism turns into what you have now, the replacement of God with technology. Because in their mind, Joe, at the end of the day, you're nothing, yourself, and all of us, we are nothing but a bunch of chemical processes that could be manipulated, maneuvered. You could push buttons here, pull buttons there, okay, to get you to act a certain way. And quite frankly, Joe, they're successful. They're successful because people want, unfortunately, something other than God. And
Well,
that's what this metaverse is basically going to. They're going to sell it, Joe, as they're providing this for you, as though this is something you actually want.
Well, here's the thing, Joe. People do want it because they're not happy with reality. You see, this is what people have to understand. People who market things and advertise in advertising, they know what they're doing. You see, they understand human nature better than most people, and they tap into it. Mark Zuckerberg with this metaverse understands that people are not satisfied with their life. They're not satisfied with their life. So what is he doing? He's creating an alternative universe. You could be whoever and whatever you want in this world that I'm going to create for you. Ultimately, if you're satisfied with your life, you're not going into the metaverse. It comes down to not knowing who you are.
Joe, let me ask you a
Again,
question. If you're satisfied with your life, do you engage in pornography? If you're satisfied with your family, all right, and the good, the true, and the beautiful, okay, are you looking to drugs? Okay. No, I mean, but this is just to me, Joe, is that a lot of people are going to look at this metaverse as being sinister, which it is. Don't get me wrong, but it's just another form of slavery. It's just another means by which they sell you just like the sexual revolution. They sell you the idea of freedom and liberation, while at the same time, because that's what the metaverse is going to do, Joe. You're free and you're liberated. But at the same time, what are they actually turning you into? A slave.
But you
You're a
willingly
slave.
walk the road because, again, like, if what Americans can't understand is this: you could be happy living in a garden apartment. You could be happy and live a very simple life.
Right.
And I know people who have done it, but we're not, because we live according to consumerism and capitalism and basic materialism, and we don't, again, know who we are. If you are looking at this world as a Christian, we won't even just say as a Catholic, a Christian, you know that this is a transitory place.
Right.
We're here to live. We're here to provide for our family's needs. We're here to worship God, serve God with all our heart, all our soul, all our mind, and basically live to go to heaven.
Right.
You see, but the thing is, that's not what's going on. You talked about pornography. You talked about all the other things that people buy into. And this is just another thing that he understands the nature of what's going on in the culture better than the people who are consuming it. And
Right.
he is basically taking advantage. And to be honest with you, he's going to get rich because people are going to buy into it hook, line, and sinker.
Let me a couple points on that, Joe, that I want to make. We're at the front line with Joe and Joe Pasillo, Joe Resinello on the Crusade Channel, always on air and always online at crusadechannel.com, the last live radio station standing. 2 points I want to make on that, Joe. One is this. You mentioned Mark Zuckerberg is going to get rich. We already know that he is super duper rich, okay? Probably worth about $150 billion. My prediction, and I've made very boneheaded predictions in my life, so don't get me wrong. It's not like I'm going to be exactly right about this. With this, and this is unfortunate, okay? With this metaverse, Mark Zuckerberg is going to become the world's first trillionaire. He's going to make money like you would not believe with this metaverse. Why? Why? Because humanity is empty right now. Joe, there's more people out there that identify as a nun. And I don't mean N-U-N. I mean N-O-N-E, no religion. And when you have, as John Lennon said, imagine no religion, which is a very dangerous idea. Well, like Nietzsche said, Joe, if you kill God, you have to replace him, don't you? Do you not then have to become God? And along those same lines, okay, my second point to you is this. Mark Zuckerberg has said in the past, and I'm paraphrasing, it might actually be a fairly accurate quote, but let's say I'm paraphrasing, that in many ways, Joe Resinello, hear me on this. He said, in many ways, social media can fill the role of religion. That's what he thinks of himself and his beloved platform. Do
Well,
you
it's
see
just
how
a
dangerous
superficial.
that is?
But I mean, to be honest with you, listen, Joe, he's just capitalized. He sees an opening to make money. It's the people. Like, we stop all this by turning it off. But again, people, like you said rightfully, you have to fill the void. God said it very clearly in scripture. He said, if you do not eat my flesh and drink my blood, you have no life within you. What don't you understand?
Right.
I didn't say it. And it's completely true. When you are not living a sacramental life, to be honest with you, and even our Protestant brothers and sisters, they have the truth. It's just not the fullness of truth. You are susceptible to being filled with nonsense. And you see it. I am a student of social media. All I put on, people could look at my Facebook page. I put the gospel on every day. I put very rarely, if ever, do I put a family portrait. Ever. On a very rare occasion will I do something like that. I don't do any of that. To be honest with you, you look at it, all that is look at me.
Right.
Look at me.
Right.
Creating a perception of wealth, creating a perception of happiness. It's telling. And these men just exploit it.
Right.
They exploit it because, again, people are looking for something to fulfill them. And clearly, it doesn't work. It doesn't work. None of that works.
Joe.
Like I said, and I know people like this. I know people in my own family. My father and mother were like this. My mother was a secretary. My father was a barber in a one-man barbershop. They're married 52 years. They live within their means. They owned a house in a decent town. They went on vacation every year and they educated 2 children. It can be done. And
Yeah.
they were happy. And they went to bed at 9 o'clock at night every day for 52 years.
Right.
But people are not satisfied because they're looking in the wrong places.
Well, Joe, the thing is, people, I think part of this article, and there was another article too, that touched on this that I pulled up by Samuel James in First Things. Again, talking about the metaverse. I think you're well. No, I know you're right. We're looking to fill a void, but the thing is this: in the past, like the way you're taught in school is that people were so miserable in the past. Okay. Well, how do you know that? Number one, okay. Well, because to them, technology is like a messiah. Okay. This technology has now come in to save the day and make our lives more exciting. And I mean, that's what things like the metaverse is about. That's what the internet is about.
I
Okay.
don't want exciting, Joe.
Well,
I'm being completely honest
the
with
thing
you. I
is this:
like to
if
mow the
people,
lawn
well,
and
if
come
people
in the
wanted,
house on Saturday.
Joe, if people wanted new and exciting, okay, and exhilarating and ecstatic, okay, what they would look towards is heaven, because that is what you experience in heaven. What you experience in hell, which is what these people who want to create this hell on earth are ultimately looking to send you to hell, is you're creating enslavement, a lack of joy. You have no joy. Okay. Even in this world, if you have this metaverse thing on your face, okay, and you're in these intense experiences, okay, there's no difference to it than pornography. You feel a rush, an adrenaline rush, a very transient rush, okay, and then afterwards you're miserable again. And then you need more. And then you need more. And then you need more. Why? Because it's as you said, you're looking in the wrong place. What does that do, Joe? What are you if what you're first of all, you're really nothing much if you're in hell, okay? You're pretty much that's where you're stuck for eternity. But what one of the main things is, one of the main pains of hell is you're Satan's slave. And the thing is, I just shudder to think is that given what we know that pornography does to people, why would anybody even think about involving themselves in this type of stuff? Because all it's going to do is put you in handcuffs again. You're going to become a slave to this, like you would be a drug or pornography. And think about the seediness of this too, Joe. Think about it. Think about it this way. See, pornography, Joe, tells you that you could have what you see on the screen. That's not realistic. Okay. That's not the way life works. Okay. What you see on the screen is detached from reality, and it's a perversion of reality. It's a perversion of the sexual act. With this metaverse, okay, what they're offering, Joe, listen to this. When with this, the stuff I've read on this, you could be whatever you want. Joe, you could do whatever you want. You know what John Horvat mentions? What if you had a fantasy of murdering somebody? Well, you could go on there in this metaverse, and guess what? You could pick up a machete and you can hack somebody to death. In other words, like this is the type of stuff that it's going to do to, like he says, you mentioned earlier, is the metaverse will harm souls at the end of the day, but they're going to present this as a good thing, and that's
Well,
even more of a
But
shame.
you got to remember this, though, Joe. People don't look at it as slavery. You see, people don't do things in order to hurt themselves. You see, just like anyone who watches pornography, just like anyone who fornicates, just like anyone who abuses drugs, like, because again, they're looking for something. There's a saying, every person that goes to a whorehouse is looking for God. They're just looking in the wrong place.
Right.
Like, it comes down to that. It also, like, the reality of it is this. Bob Dylan said it. You're going to serve somebody, but in people's minds, they will not change, they will not conform, and they have to listen, Joe. We all are looking for some type of fulfillment. Every person, whether you're an atheist or you're a person who's a devout Catholic, they're just looking in the wrong place. Because again, Joe, this is just the devil is just laying our society to waste.
Oh, you ain't
And
kidding.
you see, the thing is that the funny part is some of the smartest people think that they're like, there is no devil, there is no sin. Mark Zuckerberg doesn't think about the devil. He doesn't even think about this as sinful. In fact, in his mind, and I'll make you a bet that he actually thinks he's doing a service
Yes, he
in
does.
his mind.
I believe that.
I
I believe that.
like sincerely. He's
Yes.
like, I'm helping people. I'm helping people find fulfillment.
Right.
I'm helping people find something that they can't possess.
Joe, juxtapose that. Juxtapose that for the audience at the Crusade Channel, always on air and always online. Juxtapose that with the worldview of the Catholic Church. Okay. Because the church views nature, respects nature, understands the limitations of nature. Okay. We are encouraged, Joe. When who did we interview, Joe? I think it was Peter Kreeft, who says, do you know what you hear at every commencement speech? Every commencement speaker says the same thing. Go out there and be whatever you want to be. And Peter Kreeft then turns around and says, that's the worst thing you could tell people. Now, you could be what you want to be in terms of profession. Okay. Let's say you have the smarts to become a lawyer or a doctor. Okay. But you want to know what people need to realize. And this is the difference between the church's worldview. You can't be anything you want to be. You have limitations that are imposed on you by God and nature. And what you have to do is you have to determine within those boundaries, Joe, as we talk about on the show all the time, within those boundaries and within those limits where you can not only, thrive, but you can flourish and you can apply your talents. Let me give you an example, Joe. I think that you and I could be a nationally syndicated radio talk show. Okay. And you want to know why I say that? Not be in an egotistical way. I say that in a way because it's within the realm of possibility. We're doing it now. We're on the Veritas Catholic Network. We're at the Crusade Channel, always on air and always online. We have social media. We have a following. People listen to what we say. Thank you all, and we love you for joining us at our conversations. But my point to you, Joe, is not about us. My point to you is that if you and I said that, we understand that that's within the realm of possibility. But if you told me right now, you know what, Joe P., I don't want to do the show anymore. I'm going to talk to my wife. I'm going to take some time off. I think I want to become a professional baseball player. Okay. Then you're clearly detached from reality. But here's my point. We're getting back to the metaverse. The metaverse says, you know what? He won't tell you. Zuckerberg won't tell you can't be a Major League Baseball player.
Or a unicorn. You can't be a unicorn.
Can't be a unicorn. But Zuckerberg will tell you, I could give you the experience of being a professional baseball player. I could put you on the pitcher's mound. In other words, and you could watch a baseball game from the point of view of the mound. Again, I mentioned murder earlier. When you think about killing somebody, okay, I could, and it would give you a great amount of satisfaction. Why don't you upload that person's picture into the metaverse, and I'll create a metaverse for you where you can hack that person to death and hack them into pieces. Like the reason why I bring up the church says, no, you operate within the boundaries of the law, within nature. Okay. Zuckerberg is saying there are no boundaries. But the difference is the church is telling the truth and he's telling a lie. Because no matter how much whatever kind of metaverse you create, this fantasy world, baseball players and unicorns or whatever the case might be, at the end of the day, Joe Rossinello, it's detached from reality. You're taking a person out of the real world where they need to be, and you're putting them in some fantasy world. And most importantly, you're taking God away from them. That's the evil part about it.
It's funny. When I was reading this, I thought of something one of my childhood friends said once. If some of my friends are listening to this, they'll probably laugh. He says, Joe, if you can't lie to yourself, who can you lie to? And that is how a lot of people operate, Joe. Because I'm going to tell you this right now. I mean, one of my father, God rest his soul, his favorite statements to me, he always would say this to me. He'd say, straight ahead, Joe. Straight ahead. Life is about looking it right in the eyes,
right.
Seeing life as it is in your little world, whatever that world is. But people don't operate that way because in order to do that, that requires, to be honest with you, in some cases, courage. It requires you to be accountable. It requires you to be responsible. But people rationalize, they skirt, they pretend this doesn't go on. They live fantasies,
Right.
excluding the metaverse. And this is, again, what he understands. He's tapping in to the weaknesses of man, and he's going to enrich himself on it. I
Right.
mean, this is the truth, Joe. I mean, listen to me. Again, life is looking it straight in the face, i.e., I have $10 in my pocket and I'm going to spend $7 on lunch. Who does that? We don't live credit. Who lives in reality in America anymore? Like, they live way above their means. They live a fantasy on social media. Social media is a watered down version of this already.
Right.
People, they create this image of themselves like they're whatever on social media.
Right.
I mean, because again, they're not looking life in the face. They don't know who they are. And here's
Oh,
another thing.
I think that's a
I'm
big
not
thing.
interested in knowing who I am,
Right.
because the world says I'm a loser, because I don't drive this, I don't live in this, I don't make this, I don't have this job. So I have to create a pseudo world for myself and make myself feel better, at least on paper, in
Right.
perception. And people just follow the leader. And like you said, they enslave themselves.
They
I watched a little experiment
go ahead. Go ahead.
on my street. My neighbor put in concrete in the beginning of his driveway 2 years ago. I watched 4 other houses within a block do the same thing, and they didn't need to do it.
Right.
Why did they do it? Because they felt that they had to do it.
Right.
This is how, I'm going to be honest with you, it's like they're puppets. And people like this exploit it. People are not satisfied in who they are because they don't know who they are. And that is why they're in debt. That is why they are slaves. And there's a cost to slavery, a big financial cost to slavery, because you're trying to pretend. And this is what makes America tick. To be completely truthful with you, dude, it makes America tick. And
Well,
until we get rid of this, people like Zuckerberg will prey on us. And that's just what they're doing.
Let me tell you something. You hit the nail on the head, because people think that economics might not have anything to do with it. That this is just about the destruction of souls, which is bad enough. I mean, it's the worst thing when you're talking about the destruction of souls, okay? Because you're well, for obvious reasons, and all those out there on the Crusade channel listening to the Frontline with Joe and Joe understand that, okay? But there is the economic aspect of it. One, E. Michael Jones makes a good point when he talks about pornography and how the pornographers a lot of the times, well, what they do is they create in a person the lack of impulse control, okay? Because through the viewing of pornography. But do you know who else loves that? The oligarchs of this world, those who run banks, those who lend money. Why? Because it's, as you said earlier, Joe, why did the person pave their driveway when they really didn't need it?
Didn't have to.
Why did you go out and buy something for your kid that you couldn't afford? Okay. And rather than say to your child, look, we can't afford that right now. I'll get back to you later on when I can, but I'm not going to go into debt for that. With the pornographic mind, Joe, and this is not judgmental, this is just the reality of the situation. The pornographic mind, the mind that views pornography, okay, lacks impulse control. The pornography has diminished their ability to control their impulses. The same with this metaverse. It's going to diminish your ability to control your impulses. Well, Joe, not for nothing. Who does that benefit aside from Zuckerberg or aside from pornographers? You know who that benefits? Those who will lend you money, okay, knowing that you have no control over your impulses. Joe, it's like driving down the block and you need a car, okay? And you need a car, and that basically you could afford $250 a month, all right? That's it. That means you can afford, if you're buying a car over 6 years, you could afford about a $23,000 car, maybe something like that, 20 grand, something like that, a decent car. But you convince yourself as you're driving, as you're passing driveway to driveway to driveway, you know what? Maybe I can afford a $35,000 car. Well, you can't. But if you lack impulse control, Joe, you know what you end up doing? You end up buying a $35,000 car, spending $400 a month. You can't afford it because you're not bringing enough money to do it. And then what happens is now you're in worse trouble than before. So part of it is breaking down our ability, Joe, to resist these things, to resist acting on impulse. Remember, we said it on the show a million times. We need to learn in America, all people need to learn in America, that the more you allow your passions to control your reason, the more you are a slave. And the more you can have your reason control your passions and subdue your passions, the freer you are. That is a lesson that, Joe, if we can broadcast that from the rooftops to get out there to the wider culture more than anything, is to let people know, don't think this crap is liberating. It's not. It's meant to destroy your soul in the next world, and it's meant to destroy your life in this world and do nothing but give the oligarchs more power and more money. People like Mark Zuckerberg.
Well, I'll be honest with you. You're right. But people, when you start saying soul and sin, and some people could be listening, they instantly are like, these guys are crazy. I'll tell you this. You want to talk about slavery?
Mhm.
I've said this a million times. When you do your taxes, calculate the interest that you pay every single year and put that number on your refrigerator, circle it in a red Sharpie. And every time you open up your refrigerator, look at the interest that you pay to have that car, to have that house, the interest, and on your credit card debt.
Right.
Look at it.
Right.
You see, that's not like when we're talking brass tacks.
Right.
You're a slave.
Right.
You are a slave.
You know, Joe, what it reminds me of?
Something?
You know what it reminds you of? It reminds me of that song, Blinded by the Light. When you see that number in that red Sharpie, right? And you look at it, and all of a sudden you're blinded by the light, and it hits you right in your face.
Every day.
It blinds you because you got to look at that. You got to look at that, and you got to understand you did that. You did that. If you're paying Joe $7,000, $8,000, $9,000 a year in interest, which ain't that hard when you're talking about banks and credit card companies charging over 20% interest in many, many, many cases, okay? You're paying, because you got $50,000 in credit card debt, you're paying $8,000, $9,000, $10,000 a year or more in interest. Like you said, nail that to the door of your refrigerator.
People would rather do that than look reality in the face. You see, that's why the metaverse exists, Joe. You see, Americans don't know who we are. We live in a fantasy.
Right.
Credit, social media, it creates a fantasy.
Advertising.
Bingo. And this is, and people would rather live in that fantasy and not sleep a minute at night sweating it out because they can't pay their bills. But ultimately, they're a slave.
Right.
And this just feeds into it. This is just another thing. There's already a litany of fantasy out there that people play into. All of it. DraftKings. That's another one. Online betting. Oh my gosh. I knew guys, as you did, Joe, growing up, they used to lose their shirt every single Sunday.
Right.
I'd watch them bet every single Sunday and get crushed. Now you put your credit card in there.
Right.
I can only imagine how rich those men. I can't even believe that that's permitted legally.
See that again. See, that's part of the political problem in this country, in America, Joe, is that, and this is my beef with conservatives, okay, political and economic conservatives. They say, well, you can't mess with the free market. Yes, you can. Yes, you can. You could pass a law that says if you want to play DraftKings, you got to send them a check, but you can't put it on your credit card. The law can actually prevent you from putting in your credit. What if you got a $50,000 credit limit, Joe, on your credit card? All right, because let's say, for argument's sake, you have it, and you give that to DraftKings. Do you know how easy it is to lose 50 G's?
That's my point. And Joe, this is all the fantasy of like, this is what, because again, people are not satisfied. They have allowed the media and advertising to tell them that they're losers.
Right.
You're a loser. You
Right.
don't make $250,000 a year. You're a loser.
See,
You
but
don't
they
drive this car.
right.
And
Then
they
they
eat it up. And they eat it up.
Well, see, that's the thing. They're that they'll never say it like that, but that's the impression that they give to people is that, hey, if you serve tables or you're a middle manager in a bank or you're this or you're that, you're not really leading a fulfilled life. My attitude is, who the F are you? I'm supposed to look at you, Miss Alyssa Milano. I was reading articles this week, right? She had a couple of abortions in her 20s. All right. She's all sorts of, she's a bruised woman, Joe.
Oh,
If
there's
you
no
read the article,
question about
she's a
that.
hurt woman. That's why
I
she
agree.
champions abortion to try to justify the murder of her own children in her head. Okay. In other words, that woman has lived in Hollywood her whole life. She was a child star. She had another series afterwards, probably made all kinds of money. Are people like her are going to pass judgment on people like us because we get see the difference, Joe? The difference is, I heard this in a homily recently, okay, is that Catholics are equipped to deal with the day-to-day drudgery of life. We accept it because you want to know why? This goes back to this article. We don't expect heaven on earth. We are not trying to create heaven on earth. That's not what we're doing. Okay. I think it was Russell Kirk who said, don't immanentize the eschaton. You cannot create heaven on earth. It's impossible. The communists tried to sell that line. You're never going to have utopia. Okay. That's not the way it works. We live in a sinful world. We're sinful people. We'll never be perfect. Okay. But we strive, as Christ said, for perfection. We strive to be perfect. Okay. And when we fall and stumble, the church, our Lord, is there for us. That's what Catholics, Joe, accept as the reality of life. Okay.
But Joe, to
We're
accept
looking
that
to
means you have
real
to
quick, Joe.
live a certain way.
Well, no, but right. But what I'm saying is, but the one thing that we need to fight against as Catholics, particularly in our culture, is to prevent this from being able to be something that's widespread in the culture. Because as you said, this is, Joe, I'm going to hand it over to you. I think that this metaverse, I think it's as dangerous as cocaine or heroin or crack.
Absolutely. But this is ultimately, you could only control what you can control. This is going to come out. How you control it? Click. You turn it off.
Right.
My daughter's 7 years old. She came to me a couple days ago. She said, "Could I get on a chat, like something?" I was like, "No, I don't have a cell phone." No, the answer
Right.
is no. You see, people are afraid to live differently.
Right.
They have to be like everyone else, and they follow the sheeple right over the cliff, and they destroy their life. They're afraid that people will say, "Oh, you're weird. You're this." Well, guess what? I'll be weird. I sleep well. I sleep well. And in my house, as crazy as it can be with the kids running around and everything else, me and my wife have peace. And I'm going to tell you this, that is the, I guess, like the boon that you get from following Christ. But in order to do that, Joe, and this is what people are not willing to do, they're not willing to travel the narrow road. You see, the narrow road isn't the road of everyone else. They're
Right.
not willing to do it. The answer is no. It was no in the garden, and it's still no. I'm
Right.
not going to do it. No. And as a result, there's a cost to that.
Mm.
And there's also a benefit of doing it. And this is what the world is. It's been from the beginning until now. And in between, when you choose the other road, you're not going to have fulfillment. And then you have to fill your soul with crap.
Joe, I want to interject something there. I think you hit on probably one of the most important words in this conversation at the Frontline with Joe and Joe on the Crusade channel, always on air and always online at crusadechannel.com. Please follow Joe and I on Frontline TV on YouTube. Like, subscribe, share it over on Zuckerberg's platform if you could. But all those things help. Joe, you stumbled on the most important word in this whole conversation: peace. Peace. Do you know what happens if you and your wife go out, right? You make 70 grand a year. Your wife has a job, probably makes another 30 or 40. You got a couple of kids, okay? You got a couple of decent cars. You own a home, okay? You go to church every week. You're praying every night, okay? You have no debt. That's a big, 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 big thing to talk about and emphasize to people. If you're in debt, get out of it. And you're out of debt, don't go into it, okay? You know what you have, Joe? You have what all these Hollywood people don't have. You have what Zuckerberg doesn't have. Doesn't matter how much money and glamour and fame they have. You have peace.
But then, Joe, I
You
can't
have
put a
peace.
fancy picture on Facebook. You see, it comes down, it's buying into the lie. We've bought the lie. You see, all those things, Joe, I agree with you. In fact, to be honest with you, that is my life. But a lot of people will say, you're boring. You're just boring.
Right.
And you know something? You have to have the strength to say, well, I'm happy and I don't care
Joe, you know
what
what I
you
did
think.
over the weekend? You know what I did over the weekend? I took a ride to Walmart. Okay. I bought Battleship for $8. Okay. And I bought Jenga for I think $9. Okay. And I played Jenga and Battleship with my foster son, who's about to become our adopted son over the next 3 or 4 months. Okay. I bring that up only to say is in the world that you're describing, the Hollywood world, the advertising world, that's completely boring. Completely boring. But you know what it was for me? Absolutely peaceful, absolutely fulfilling. It was fun. I'm home. I'm not doing anything sinful. Moreover, Joe, I don't need any distractions. I was bonding with my son, just playing a game of Battleship, a game that we grew up with. You know what I mean? Um, and yeah, they would call that boring. And you know what I would tell them? Brother, you're living in a fantasy world. If you think I'm boring for doing something like that, or for taking care of my wife, for going to shop right, going to buy food, coming home and cooking, maybe having a little glass of wine while we cook, okay, or then we pray. If you think that's boring, listen, knock yourself out. But you know what I have that you don't have? I have peace. I might not have a big bank account, maybe never will, okay, but I have peace. And I think that's the ultimately, Joe, underneath this all is what Augustine said. These people, their hearts are restless, but they refuse to look towards God. They refuse to look towards God.
Well, ultimately, you hope and pray for people. And I think, we got roughly about 15 minutes. I want to talk about Eslin's article in Crisis
Sure,
Magazine
sure,
because it's all or
absolutely.
nothing. And he talks about gods. And this is just to begin with it. He says, ye shall be as gods, said the serpent. He goes on. He says, I am thinking about the characteristic sins of our age. These have to do first or most obviously with the body, but they seep in their poison into social relations, economics, medicine, education, law, art, politics, corrupting them all. If holiness is like a royal dye that ennobles all it touches, sin is like acid. And to accept a principle of sin is to introduce the sin in a concentrated and absolute form. When it is mortal and not venial, meaning this, it won't just make you sick, it kills you.
Kills you.
Nothing merely human can then withstand it. Only the might of God could turn that acid to salt and repair and recreate the things it has destroyed. It comes down to change. It comes down to being humble. It comes down to these words, I'm wrong. It comes down to this, I'm sorry. It comes down to this, I'm going to actively try to change. It comes down to this, I'm going to rely on God to help me to change. And the reality of it all is he will. But it doesn't look pretty. And it's not going to get you the attention on Facebook. It's not going to put you on the cover of People magazine, but it'll put you in heaven. And I was thinking about this too, just today at church. A lot of times, like people at church, and I've seen this in pious circles, when you have a big family, it's messy. All the people out there who are listening to me who have numerous children, it's messy. It doesn't always
Right.
look pretty. Getting up, changing a kid during mass, walking with another kid. You look like you rolled down a hill. You put on a clean shirt. By the end of the mass, it looks like you rolled down a hill. Well, guess what? Doing the right thing looks like that. but we don't have the courage to do it because we're concerned what everyone else has to say, what everyone else has to think. We want to keep up with the Joneses. We want to put in that driveway we can't afford. We want to go on the metaverse because we're not satisfied with our family. We want to buy things we can't afford because we don't like who we are. We don't like who we are. Ultimately, that comes down to this: I'm a sinner and I need to be forgiven. I need to confess my sins and I need to work to change my life. What does that require? Courage. And we lack it. We lack it.
Yeah.
Some of the toughest people I know are cowards. Are cowards. They will never walk the narrow road. Ever.
Right. Right. Now, listen. You're at the front line with Joe and Joe Pasillo, Joe Rossinello on the Crusade Channel, always on air and always online at crusadechannel.com. Joe, you're absolutely right. The one thing I will tell you is this. I know from my own experience of God's grace and the arc of my life and the journey that we're all still on. But just speaking to myself for a second, but what I do understand is this: little by little, because the world is hard to shake off. I'm, and I know you are too. I'm very forgiving and merciful, and quite frankly, compassionate towards people who take that stance for the simple reason, because I know that they don't have God. Because I know from my own personal experience, if they even opened up, Joe, a little bit, what you start to do over time, and I was guilty of it too. I'm never going to lie about my life and how I lived it. But what you know about God's grace is that over time, one of the fruits is you don't care about the rest of the world. You care about people. Don't get me wrong. You concern yourself with people's welfare, their well-being, the poor, and lost souls. Okay. But what you do over time, Joe, and I think it's such a great benefit of God's grace, is you don't care about things of the world. You don't care about what they have to say about you. You don't care if they call you a weirdo, and they do. You know that people call you a weirdo, and you know that people call me a weirdo. People that we know in our lives
Oh, I
do that,
know.
as a matter of
Trust
fact.
me.
But one thing I would say, I know you very, very well now. Okay. I know you now for over 8 years or so. You don't care and I don't care. I don't care. Why? Because I'm so great? No, because when you have grace and you seek God's grace, you really just don't give a crap about that stuff. Don't care about status. Care about paying the bills, but you don't care
Well,
if you
that's
have a
you got
big
to do
bank
that.
account. But that's one of the things, and the reason why I pray all the time for people, we all pray for the conversion of all sinners, particularly ourselves, our continued conversion, is that people will just open themselves up, Joe, a little bit to that grace. I feel sometimes people don't even let God in a little bit, because if you did, you'll begin to change. Any human being, if you let God in a little bit, will begin to change their lives, albeit probably slowly at first. Okay. But I think these people are devoid of God. They've chased away God. They don't want God, and they don't even let his grace anywhere near them. What say you?
Well, I would agree. I mean, ultimately, I think people come to the end of themselves, and you have to make a choice. Um, and that's a journey. I mean, we're not there yet, and believe me, I am a flawed individual. Believe me. But with that said, ultimately, you bang your head against the wall for so long. You got to just say to yourself when you wake up in the middle of the night and you're staring at the ceiling, this isn't working. This isn't working. A great prayer is this: God, I don't believe in you, but I want to. Help me. Help me. I don't believe in you, but I want to. I'm not happy. I have no peace. Help me if you're
Mm,
there. You
right.
see, that's a prayer. And
A lo-
if you do that, God will.
yes. And thank you for saying that, Joe, because that was my point. I want to tell you something interesting. Um, I read an article. I brought up Alyssa Milano earlier. There was an article, I think it was in Breitbart or somewhere, and I was reading it. And what struck me is that her and I forgot the other one's name. I think her name was Michelle Williams. We covered her on the show. An award, and she got up there and she justified her abortion and to the audience, and gave her pagan confession to her pagan god and her pagan audience. Okay, and she had her idol in her hand. Uma Thurman, who had an abortion years ago, who says she still struggles with that. Okay. And the reason why I'm bringing this up is because I was thinking about that as you were just talking. I don't think any one of those three people are looking in the place they're supposed to for the peace that they obviously don't have. They're not looking towards God and his forgiveness. They continue to justify what they've done for the sake of their careers, okay? And they admit that they struggle over these things, and they have a problem with what they've done, and they won't say, I'm sorry to God. Now, Michelle Williams will go up in front of an audience of her colleagues at the whatever it was, the Emmy Awards or the People's Choice or whatever award it was, okay? But she won't go into a confessional, say to God, I'm sorry for what I've done. I mean, can you imagine I mean, and I'm only bringing it up because these are obviously women who are struggling with what they did, or else it wouldn't have been in the news. Okay. So I'm not making this up about them. And yet they won't repent, Joe. They won't repent. And you know what that tells me? That they have nothing. See, we have to emphasize this to all our brothers and sisters out there, Joe. The vast majority of people don't have big bank accounts. They don't live in the limelight. They get up every day and go to work. They got kids. They got to change diapers. They got to pay bills. They got the gas and electric. They got taxes. They got all these things. Okay. And I'm going to go back to it again. Because we have God, they have a peace that they have no experience of.
But people have to see it. You see, I'm going to be honest with you. You see, people don't believe that exists. You see, a lot of times people could hear you. They could hear what I'm saying right now. They're like, he's full of crap. Like they have to see it. I say this all the time. Man believes what they see.
Right.
I could remember seeing very holy people in my life, and I have met very holy people, very holy nuns, very holy religious, and they're out there. Just so you know, there's a light in their eyes. I could remember, I swear this is a true story, in the Bronx, I ran into this old missionary of charity. When I mean old, dude, she had to be like 90. It was on Good Friday at St. Adalbert's in the Bronx. And I almost knocked her over. I was running up the stairs because I was in the bathroom and she was at the top of the stairs. It was actually providential. I almost knocked her down and I looked at her face. She had a light in her eyes. She had to be 90 and a joy on her face. And they helped her up the aisle to venerate the cross. Dude, I actually wept watching her.
Right.
I was like, that's what I'm talking about. That's real. You can't fake that. There was like literally like that woman, she could have been floating. That's how, like, her face. That's what people have to see. They have to see that in you, and they have to see that in me. And then they will not be interested in the metaverse. They will inquire, is God real? How is this person doing what he or she does?
Right.
This is why we have to be transformed. Until that happens, nothing is going to happen. People have to see it, and they have to then question, and they will question their own life. If they see it, they say, oh my gosh, look at that person. Why can't I be like that? Damn, I'm missing something.
All right. Right. They're missing. Well, they're missing a lot. And again, we have to emphasize, Joe, at the front line with Joe and Joe, what does this all really come down to at the end of the day? To strive to live in a state of sanctifying grace. In other words, that with that grace, no matter how hard it is, Joe, I went to confession the other day. I'm ashamed of my sins. I don't like the fact that I'm weak many times. I'll tell that to the audience. I don't care. I'm a human being who Jesus came to save. Okay. The difference is the willingness to bend the knee. Why? Because I'm so much better. No, but the thing is, but like you said, Joe, about that nun, okay, about that missionary of charity, okay, that's reality. See, this evil metaverse, Joe, all it's doing is offering just an alternative version of reality, which is not reality at all. There is no alternative version of reality. There is just what it is. And the escapism, the pornography, the metaverse, the drugs, all this crap that runs around our culture, okay, is all meant to keep us distracted from God's call for us to just bend our knee and say to him, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Jesus said, knock and it will be answered. Didn't he say that? People are not knocking, Joe. That's the difference. That's the only difference. Okay. People refuse to knock on the door, because to knock on the door means you have to begin to give things up in this life. And then eventually, as Anthony Esselin said, it's all or nothing. On my deathbed, Joe, I'm still going to be a sinner. I want to say to God, God, I tried. I tried to give everything I had. Okay. And hopefully, and I am very hopeful I'll be forgiven of my sins. Okay. But that's, I think, really the
Well, you
difference.
will be if you ask.
Right.
Joe,
Exactly.
it comes right down to that. Like, listen, God is not a tyrant. He brings us along. I'm telling you, that's why as Catholics, we have to be salt and light in the world. We have to show people a different way. And in order to do that, we have to walk a different way. We can't be like everybody else. You're not like, listen, this isn't a classroom. We're not like lecturing on some like logic class in like sophomore year in college.
Mm-hmm.
Catholicism is a lived art. It's a lived art. The world has to see the beauty of God, and they have to see it in you. If they don't see it in you, they'll never believe it. They'll never believe it. And this is the thing. The beauty of it isn't you. It's
Right.
God. You have to let him in. You have to say yes. You have to surrender yourself. And you have to be willing to not have necessarily an easy life, but you'll have a good one. And your life will end well. And you will go to where you belong, heaven. That's why we were created, not for the metaverse, so I could be a unicorn. What the hell is that? That's insane.
Joe, listen, I'll tell you one thing, though. We're coming up on the end of the show, but I'll tell you this, though. But unicorns, that's going to be tame compared to what's going to be going on in this metaverse. And again, I guess it's a product that's being produced. I don't know that any of our politicians are going to do anything about this. Okay. Probably be an unregulated wild, wild west. We need to convince people the same way we do when we talk about pornography. We need to tell people, convince people, preach it from the rooftops. Okay. Stay away. Stay away, because as John Horvat said in his article, it's poison. It's meant to kill you, not meant to make you feel good. Just like pornography is not meant to make you feel good. It's poison that's meant to kill you in this life and turn you into a slave and destroy your soul in the next. And Joe, that's the truth. Any final thoughts, Resinello?
I'll just end it as my father would say, straight ahead. We have to live our life straight ahead. And you know something? It's the best way. What's the quickest point? A to B. You want to go somewhere? It's not A to Q to Z to B to D. A to B. Straight ahead. We'll get there.
We'll get there. Joe Rossino, it's a great place to leave it off. And we want to thank you all for joining us at the Frontline with Joe and Joe Pasillo and Joe Rossinello. And we went into the breach tonight on the Crusade Channel, always on air and always online at crusadechannel.com, the last live radio station standing. Remember, the chat room's always open at crusadechannel.com/chat. And we do encourage you all to become premium members of the Crusade Channel. Go on the Crusade Channel, listen to the station for free, and we know you're going to be hooked in a good way. To King Dude, Rick Barrett, Joe and Joe, Kennedy Hall, Brother Andre Marie, and the whole line up there. So yeah, we would encourage you to do so. We want to thank you again. And remember, until the next time, that our conversation is your conversation, and that conversation is going on everywhere. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks.
Liberals may be laughing now, but they're in for a rude awakening in 2024 when President Donald Trump becomes the second president in American history to reclaim the White House. This highly collectible commemorative coin celebrates the historic presidency of Donald J. Trump, and you could claim it for free today as part of a nationwide promotion. Every Trump supporter will want this one-of-a-kind keepsake featuring America's 45th president of the United States. This souvenir coin is a perfect gift for anyone that voted for Trump and wants to support his quest to reclaim the White House in 2024. Warning, they only have a few hundred left in stock. If you wait, these special coins could be gone for good. The fine folks at Patriot Powered Products have covered the cost of the coin production, and all they ask is you cover the modest cost of shipping, handling, and processing, and they'll ship your free coin pronto. Click the link in the description to claim your free Trump 2024 The Revenge Tour coin before they run out.